We are back for more Vancouver Blizzard franchise here on NBA 2K25, and today we finish off the regular season in our fourth season in the NBA. And for today's episode, I wanted to give kind of a state of the franchise update here at the start. I was actually going to do that at the end of last episode, but I ended up ending with the draft preview instead. As we head into the final stretch here of the season, I did want to quickly just talk about the award races. I mentioned at the beginning of the year that I think, although it was a lofty goal, that Mago could be in contention for MVP, and I want to see if that's still on the table here as we head into March. Luka Doncic currently is the number one favorite for MVP, but Mago is right behind him at number 2. The last time I checked, he was actually at number 3, and Wemby was at 2. So he is right there with the best player in all of basketball right now. Unfortunately, Luka's having this absolutely nuts season, apparently. Averaging his career high. I mean, he's averaged 35.5 before, so he's had, crazy years in the sim. This was his first year in the sim. This 35 points per game. So his second year in Dallas going very well. His assists per game is at an all-time low since his rookie year, but his efficiency is insane, his volume is insane, and so I don't think that's a surmountable lead. The more reasonable goal, I guess you could say, for him was first team All-NBA. I thought, of course, MVP was going to be very reaching high and maybe not the most attainable goal, but first team All-NBA was kind of maybe the more attainable, reasonable version of what we could expect from him, and he has pretty much got that locked up. Number 2 in the MVP race with, what is it, like 7-8 weeks? Not even that. It's more like 5 or 6 weeks left in the season. He's pretty much got first team All-NBA wrapped up in the books. Now, whether or not we play a game here kind of depends on if the end of the season becomes important at all. I do want to get a look at the Pacers, but if it's a game that neither team really needs for seeding or anything, it might just not be the time. The Pacers are potentially, a finals preview should we make it that far this year, or maybe not even this year. It could be in future years. Since their trade for Giannis, they've been at the top of the East. The other thing I want to take a look at here before we head into the simulation is the NBA standings. We are currently the 3 seed here. There's a 2-game difference between us and the Rockets, and then there's a 3.5 game between us and the Mavericks. So I think one of these top 3 seeds is the most reasonable. We could end up being the 4 if we kind of faltered a little bit down the stretch, but I probably don't see us going down further than 4. So with our seeding kind of pretty steadily in hand, again, there's a good chance we don't actually get any gameplay in this episode and we wrap up the season, see where everything stands, see where our playoff opponent is, and we go from there. And the last win ended up not mattering at all, so just simulated past that game, and we will get right into the season awards here. And no surprise, Luka with his 36 points per game is your MVP for the 2028 season. Allen Larson is your rookie of the year, ended up with 16, 11, and 4 with just under 3 stocks per game. Shooting wise, 45% from the field isn't great for center. 26 from 3 probably factored into that, but this is just year 1. I mean, Allen Larson and the Clippers figure to be somebody that's going to be relevant in this franchise for a long time. Amen Thompson is your 6th man of the year. The Rockets, of course, even with the departure of Kevin Durant, still have really good depth. Victor Wembanyama is your depoy for how many years straight is it at this point? Judd Trent is your most improved player. He had a massive +8 upgrade in the offseason after being one of the main pieces in the Giannis trade. And Tyrese Maxey is your clutch player of the year, with the Pacers, Rick Carlisle being your coach of the year, Joseph Jackson of the Rockets being your exec of the year. Let's go ahead and talk about the All-NBA teams now. We know Luka Doncic, but Ayrton Saramago has officially made his first team All-NBA. So in his first 3 years in the NBA, Rookie of the Year his first year, second team All-NBA his second year, and first team All-NBA in year 3. This guy is absolutely on a Hall of Fame trajectory to start his career. Averaged 28 points per game for us, 10.5 rebounds, 6 assists, 2.7 stocks per game, shot 53% from the field, and got over 40%. He was 0.001 away from a 50-40-90 season on that volume. Career high minutes per game, although just barely above it last year. Plus minus is 7.8. I do want to go through some of the advanced stats here later on as well. You have SGA doing some really nice things for OKC. You got Victor Wembanyama, well documented how well he's playing in this series. And Nikola Jokic continues to be an absolute stat sheet stuffer in Denver. De'Aaron Fox for Dallas leads your second team All-NBA with Giannis. First full season in Milwaukee. It was actually his lowest points per game since, the 2016-17 season was the last time he was as low as 25 points per game. He's got a really good supporting cast around him though, so I think that that helps with that. LaMelo Ball out here, second team All-NBA, 24-8. You got Ja Morant, 24-7-7, and then Tyrese Halliburton, 2 Indiana Pacers there on the second team All-NBA squad. Third team now, you got Tatum leading it off here, and the Celtics made that, of course, big time Jaylen Brown trade, trying to maybe make the roster a little bit more well balanced instead of top heavy. We'll see if that works for them in the coming years, with Jason Tatum hitting 30. Alperen Şengün is on the All-NBA third team, 28-6, 24-6-4, 29 points for Maxey, nearly 30 a game. Is really nice. Cade Cunningham on here as well, and that will round out your All-NBA teams. Defensively, you got Wemby, Thompson, Sarr, Adebayo, and Mobley, alongside Saramago making the All-NBA defensive second team. You'll love to see it. Chet Holmgren, Giannis Shea, and Walker Kessler alongside him here. We go now to the rookie team. So you had Allen Larson. Let's see how some of the other rookies around the league did here. You have Frazier. I mean, if this is 9.3 points assists per game is definitely what caught him there. I was just looking at his scoring and it didn't look great, but awesome assist man. You got Davor Alanichev here, who was somebody that I liked a decent bit coming out of the draft. 8-8. You got Lawrence Barber, 14 points per game, 2.5 assists. I think he's going to have a pretty big developmental year for Charlotte. You have the Seattle Supersonics with Florin Paunescu, 11 points per game, 8 rebounds, a steal and a block per game for him. So nice to see somebody that will, of course, be part of the second channels team, contributing there on first team All-NBA. You got 7 and 6 for Ralph Cherry. You got 7 and just under 4 for Victor Jackson on our Vancouver Blizzard. Another man getting some awards, as is Clayton Rodman, who's 9 points and 2 assists. Get him on the second team All Rookie. And then Travis Poole and Greg Mann. So we got really towards, reaching down the bottom of the barrel here for the leftover scraps by the end. So not a ton of rookies were actually playing, but the first team, All Rookie first team, did have some pretty solid contributors on it. So you have Minnesota and Sacramento playing for the 7-8. You have Golden State and Portland in the 9-10. We do end up in the number 3 spot, and we will be facing off against the Oklahoma City Thunder. That is a tough matchup for our squad. I'm very excited to see how this series plays out. I know we're the favorite here, but I think OKC has the potential to be a very tough matchup for us. They can easily put Chet at the 4 and guard Saramago with him, which is something I want to get to here a little bit later on in the episode. That's part of our kind of state of the roster update here. Cleveland and Atlanta as well as Philadelphia and Miami playing in the play-in. Let's see who gets those final spots. It'll be Cleveland and Miami in the East, earning playoff spots, as well as Sacramento and Minnesota. Got to have the MVP in the playoffs at the very least. So it'll be Luka versus Wemby. It'll be De'Aaron Fox versus Jalen Green. So the Suns doing pretty well in their rebuild. It looks like they're already back into the playoffs. So that's a good young core coming together over in Phoenix. You got Houston in the 1 seed going off against Anthony Edwards and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Let's go ahead and talk about how the team performed this season. Very well documented just how good Ayrton Saramago has been, but how has the rest of the team performed? Let's go ahead and look at Cameron McKnight, who did have his career low in scoring this year, but it's all been 21 or 20 points per game. This is the player that he's been. We've kind of talked about that, where his development curve is really flattened, and he's going to be the player that he has been. He's not really much of a 20-point per game scorer in spotlight games, though, is my worry. I feel like, I don't know if the playbook just isn't working for him or what it is. We know that he's not much of a creator, which I think is an overarching issue with this team right now. Is outside of Saramago, where is our creation coming from? And I think there are players that do better in spotlight games but don't sim very well, and there are players who sim very well but don't perform well in the spotlight games. And McKnight, at least scoring wise, seems to kind of be in a boat where he has more volume scoring in simulation. He doesn't have a lot of, necessarily bad games in spotlight games. He just doesn't have a lot of high 20+ point games in the spotlight games anymore. I feel like we haven't been doing a good enough job of giving him off-ball opportunities, and some of the scoring opportunities that we give him aren't very good positions for him. Now, he still, of course, contributes on the defensive end, and he still scores a decent bit. But I think one of the goals we need going forward is to get more scoring out of McKnight in the spotlight games. He's never going to be a creator. That's just not who he is. So we have to do a better job of getting him more off-ball opportunities. But 44.5% from the field, 40% from 3, and 93% from the free throw line for McKnight. Very much so a good efficiency player. Albert Ellis is the next in scoring here. He had about a point more per game over last season, a little bit more rebounds, and an assist and a half more than his rookie year. Stocks wise, very similar. Did cut down on the turnovers a bit, and the efficiency is up about 2.5% better from the field and about 5% better from 3. You like to see this increased efficiency for sure, but he's another one who in the spotlight games has really struggled this year. And I think the biggest weakness for the team right now is it seems that too often we are asking Saramago to carry the entire load on offense in our spotlight games. When we drafted Albert Ellis, or when I drafted Albert Ellis, it was the vision for it was having that second creator, the guy that could lead some lineups when Saramago was sitting, but could also spell him at times when they're both on the court, be a secondary scorer. Honestly, almost 7 assists per game is pretty good for what I thought he would be as a passer. So I think his development is going along really well in that area, but scoring wise, efficiency wise, especially in spotlight games, I feel like he's left a lot to be desired on the season. Rarely is he shooting even above 40% in a spotlight game. I need him to show up big in the playoffs. If we have really any hopes of making a deep run, I think he's going to have to be more around like the 45% he shot on the year. That's the kind of Albert Ellis efficiency that we're going to need in the playoffs if we want to go far. I even think round 1 can be difficult if we don't get a good Albert Ellis series. I'm putting some pressure on him. He needs to perform. I know it's just year 2. He's 20 years old, so I'm not saying if he doesn't perform well in this playoffs, he's a bum, he's a bust, so we're not going to trust in him going forward. But if Albert Ellis struggles and it results in us having an early exit in the playoffs, it's going to open up the door for some things on this roster. Jalen Duren had his highest scoring season of his career this season, as well as his most rebounds per game. He shot over 60% from the field for his first time in a Vancouver uniform. Oh, that's not even true. He shot 60% the year before, but his career high in a Vancouver uniform. For the first time, didn't make any threes on the year though, so that's a fun surprise. And Jalen Duren is a guy that we know who he is. He's gonna, get some athletic finishes on the inside. He's gonna snag a bunch of rebounds, and he's just gonna provide a lot of athleticism at that 5 spot. I think Jalen Duren is a guy that I really, really like, but you have to wonder at times, is some of the offensive stagnancy, can we put some portion of the blame pie on Jalen Duren? Obviously, it's not all of it. Our creators haven't done good enough, the non-Mago creators. But a guy who like Jalen Duren, who can't score outside the paint, when you have a guy like Ellis, who so far in his career has been his best as a driver, when you have a guy like Ayrton Saramago, who can score from everywhere, but I like him best on the inside, is Jalen Duren starting to crowd things there? You have to wonder. As of right now, I still want to make things work with Jalen Duren, have this core 4 be the core 4 that leads us into the future. But I feel like this playoffs is going to tell us a lot about what we need to do going forward. Lonzo Ball here for us. Perhaps his last season in Vancouver did have, he was really consistent, 11.9, 11.9, and 11.8 in his first 3 years. Did dip a little bit this year. My thing with him is he missed just 14 games, but he gets injured all the time, and it'll be 3 games here, 3 games there, 2 games here, 1 game here, 5 games, whatever it is. But I feel like that's not going to get any better as he ages. I feel like I'm starting to be like, Saramago's great, and then complaining about everybody else. I don't want it to feel like that. The team is the 3rd best team in the West. We had a really good year this year, our first ever 50-win season. But we're kind of getting to the part of this series where Saramago is so good that we have to start being maybe hypercritical of everyone else, because he is good enough to be the best player on a finals winning team. And now the pressure is on to build that team around him. Clayton Rodman, going to be the guy that, of course, as of right now, projects to replace Lonzo Ball. He, 9.2 points per game, really similar efficiency from the field as Lonzo Ball, not nearly as good from 3. Lonzo shot 41% from the 3, which is, of course, excellent. He was 35%, but of course, he has a lot of room to grow, and I'm excited to see kind of what he can do. Whether or not he has a role in the playoffs, I'm certainly open to hear what you guys want to hear about it. The last time we watched him play was against Seattle, and he had his best game in a spotlight game as a Blizzard, but the Seattle Supersonics aren't quite the caliber of team that we'll be facing in the playoffs, so it's very risky. He could be really bad and tank some games, but he did show some growth in the most recent spotlight game. Victor Jackson, our other rookie here, 7.2 points per game, 3.7 rebounds, 45% from the field, just 32.8% from 3 though. Somebody that we took kind of for his early contributions, and I feel like they certainly weren't bad considering he played backup center. This is the most efficient we've had a backup center play in this entire series. We've had struggles there from Zeke Naji to Andre Hardy, now to Victor Jackson. He's been the best one efficiency wise by far for us. So I don't know if it's just this playbook or something, but we've had troubles in the past. So 45%, I think you're going to take it. The 3s you want up a little bit higher, of course. You have Max Christie here, who was our 5th starter throughout the year, started all 82 games. Our starting lineup started all 82 games. We did not have a different starting lineup the entire year, which I got to give props to that. It was the backups who kind of missed some time, but our starters were extremely consistent, and you got to give shouts out to that, and they're all healthy heading into the playoffs. We had a couple of day-to-day injuries, but nobody actually was forced to miss time here down the stretch. 46% from the field and 40% from 3. That's the kind of efficiency I want from a fifth starter. I don't ask much of the fifth starter most of the time. I feel like, having a really good fifth starter is oftentimes maybe a little bit overrated. But in the case of Christie, from that fifth starter, when you do get the opportunities, can you be efficient with them? Had 3 assists to 1 turnover as well, which is pretty good. And shooting 40% from the field, that's the kind of efficiency you want when you have those limited opportunities. Dame didn't play much. Leonard Miller ends up with just 5.5 points per game, but he had a pretty limited role. So if you're talking about per 36, it's his best year scoring wise since he had a very small sample size here. He didn't score 30 points per game on very high usage there, but his career high in field goal percentage and 3-point percentage. He was somebody that I wasn't really planning on playing this year, but the comment section convinced me to give him a shot, and it was a really good idea. That being said, I don't know if this is good enough to maybe secure him a job going forward like 100%, but it was certainly a sign of improvement to the point where I'm open to bringing him back. I believe he has 1 more year on his deal after this one, and he does. Josh Green continues to be a very low volume player for us. When you have low volume, you're going to see big percentage swings for sure. You don't want to see a 10% percentage swing from 3, 36% from 3 isn't where it needs to be. Yes, it's on just 1.7 attempts per game, but still it's the same thing with Christie. With these guys that aren't asked to do a lot, I want you to be better with the limited opportunities you have. And so Josh Green, a little bit of a down year. I'm not going to say it's 100% going to lead to him leaving the team, but I think it opens the door for it for sure. About like half as many points per game that he's had in the past. And yes, his minutes did go down, but that was partly reactive. He was getting 20 plus minutes per game earlier on in the season, and his struggles had me diminish his role. So I think he was struggling even with kind of similar minutes that he'd had in the past earlier on in the season. Andre Hardy didn't play much, and there you have it. So let's go ahead and now look at some advanced stats. I would just want to see who's impacting the game maybe beyond the box score here. PER, I mean, Saramago's going to lead us in all these. That's no surprise. I just want to see if there are any surprises. So Jalen Duren is our second best PER player. Ellis in third, and McKnight down at fourth. For us, Ball, Miller, Jackson, Rodman. Our worst full-time player was Josh Green with just a 6.9 PER. Remember, 15 is average. So we had 4 above average players, and McKnight was barely above average, and then Lonzo was barely below average. As far as efficiency goes, a really nice 36 efficiency from Saramago, 24 from Duren, Ellis in third, and McKnight at fourth. So with these two scores, it was pretty clear that our best player this year was Saramago, second best Duren, third best Ellis, fourth best McKnight. Game score, you're going to see the exact same order once more. True shooting percentage, Saramago leads us here, 62.8 from Max Christie. Excellent efficiency from our fifth starter there. 61.8 from Duren. He doesn't get the boost you get from shooting threes, of course. And surprisingly enough, Ellis, our fourth best true shooting player. You love to see it. Again, I'd like to see it more in spotlight games than just in the sim, but the fact that he's simming well is a good sign for sure, because at least in the regular season, when you're worried about seeding and such, simming is still going to be more important. But overall wise, how they play in the spotlight games at this point in the series is more important, because we want playoff success. Rebound rate, Jalen Duren leads us there, but Saramago, his rebounds this year, he did drop off a little bit. He was at one point at 11. Now he's down to like 10.5. That was when he was at 11. It was third best in the entire league. We had the number 1 rebounder and number 3 rebounder in the entire league at that point. I bet he's down a little bit now, now that he's lost a half rebound a game, but maybe, I've always really valued the rebounding that you get from Jalen Duren. Rebounding from the center spot is so important in NBA 2K when it comes to simulation wins. But when you have a rebounder as dominant as Mago, maybe that lessens the rebounding impact of Jalen Duren. It's still very much so important. The fact that we pretty much suck in every single rebound when these two are on the court is valuable. But maybe having a rebounder as good as Mago frees up some rebounding responsibility from the center and you can focus on other skills, maybe. Assist ratio, Max Christie was actually in the lead here. So I really like the role that Max Christie has found on this squad. Whether he keeps it as a starter or even coming off the bench, I continue to be impressed with Max Christie. You have Josh Green, who's up high on this stat as well, so got to give him props for that for sure. Other guys above 20, you have Mago and Ellis as well. Turnover rate here, the highest was Josh Green. So yeah, you love the assist ratio, but not the turnover ratio on him. Victor Jackson pretty high on this. He's a rookie. We'll give him a pass for now. Pure point rating, Albert Ellis leads us there. Max Christie just above Lonzo Ball there. Then you have Mago. Possessions, 25 possessions going to Mago per 100. You have 19 going to McKnight, 17 going to Duren, and 16.6 going to Ellis. I'd like, honestly, probably at this point for Ellis to be number 2, McKnight at 3, and Duren at 4, if I'm being honest with this. Usage, 27.7 honestly feels kind of low for Mago. He has really high tendencies for touches, but I mean, he was second in MVP with a 27.7 usage, so I'm not gonna complain about it. He had a 25.2 estimated wins average this year. Only other one in double digits was Duren, so more than double anybody else on the team. Shows just how much he's carrying this team. Leads us in everything that's important except for, you know, assist ratio, and he's even really good for a power forward there. Mago is excellent. Have we constructed a roster that can win it all without him? You know, in the past, I've been pretty confident that it's just, you know, kind of wait for these guys to develop. We're still really young. But if you think about it, I mean, McKnight's kind of capped out. Obviously, our vets like Ball, Miller, Jackson, unfortunately, even though he's a rookie, he's kind of capped out. We do get some progression from Rodman, but really the only guy that has a lot of room to grow, other than actually Mago himself, is Albert Ellis. So if we're going to stick with this core, that's putting a lot on Albert Ellis's development plate. And that's why I think this playoffs is going to be so important for Albert Ellis. Can he show that we can trust him going forward and that we don't need to shake anything up on this roster, because we can put our faith in Albert Ellis to eventually blossom into that really good number 2 option for this squad that can take heat off of Mago and can carry the squad for stretches once Mago is sitting. That's what we're going to find out in the playoffs. I will quickly here, just for the sake of those who are interested, go over the Supersonics. Let's sort by points, just so you guys can see kind of what your guys did this year. And there you go. That should give you, I feel like you probably want 3 point. How about we do it like this? And I'll just go player by player, and you can see all of your players, kind of what they did this year, and that can kind of inform maybe what you want to do going forward. Of course, this will probably be the last time we even mention the Seattle Supersonics before we get to the offseason. And there you have it. There's the stats for the Supersonics. So let's go ahead and talk about our first round playoff matchup, the Oklahoma City Thunder, and that will be how we end off this episode. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is going to be a very tough guy to stop. He was shutting down Albert Ellis. We played these guys in one of the games in the regular season this year, and Shai just totally kind of shut down Albert Ellis in that game. I'm very worried about that. You know, I talked about a lot of pressure being on Albert Ellis, and the Thunder are maybe the worst matchup for him. SGA was putting the clamps on for sure, and he's also a very tough guy to stop. Not going to have Albert Ellis on him like we did in the regular season game. He's definitely going to be the matchup that we have Cameron McKnight on, but that's going to be a tough matchup for him. Chet, it'll be interesting to see if they keep him at center or if they do try and put him at power forward. I think they'll probably try both options to see which one works best. But I mean, with Shea and Chet, that's a very, very tough duo for us. I think they match up pretty well against our squad. Chet, of course, 18 points per game, 10.5 rebounds, 2.2 blocks, really good interior defender, can do a bit of everything on the offensive side. And then you add in their third star, Jalen Williams, and that's when this team becomes special. They were the #1 seed last year, dropped down to 6 this year. I wonder if that was injury related or anything. They did make a trade to acquire Jaime Jaquez to be their 4th star. And so they have a really, really good top 4 that's going to be tough to handle in this series. Again, we're the 3 seed going against the 8, but just kind of how it was, last year in the 1 seed, where even though we were the lower seed, I felt like we were the favorites. I honestly think we might be underdogs in this series. Topic here plays 2 guard for them this year just because of the roster balance being a little bit weird, but all 5 starters, at least 86 overall on this team. The depth isn't amazing, but it's certainly not bad by any means either. You have Lou Dort, just a stud defender coming off the bench. You have Khalil Ware, who they might start at center and move, Holmgren to the 4 and Williams to the 3, and maybe bring off Jaquez off the bench as some sort of super bench player, something like that. You have Pokuševski, who they can bring off the bench. AJ Mitchell's a good shooter they can bring off the bench. They can bring off Brad Stevens off the bench, who, if I remember right, is kind of a mid-range guy. Let me see here. No, more of a defensive guy. So they got 2 defensive specialists coming off the bench in Dort and Stevens. They got shooters coming off the bench like AJ Mitchell. Their bench isn't quite as impactful as maybe the Rockets is, but their starting lineup is very, very good. And as long as they have a couple of those guys out on the court at all times, which they definitely will, they'll always be tough to stop. Let me know what you think of this round 1 matchup. Predict the winner and predict the number of games. I want to see who can get it right. If you've made it this far into the episode, let's see who can predict it right. I'm going to predict. I haven't liked what I've seen from the spotlight games. I'm going to predict Thunder in 6 in this series. I think the Thunder are a very bad matchup for us right now, and I haven't liked the way McKnight and Ellis have looked in most of these spotlight games. I got to be honest, and they're going to both need to be really good in this series, because I think if the Thunder decide to throw Chet at Saramago, he's going to do enough to slow him down to force the rest of the team to kind of beat them. And I'm just not quite sure that they can. And I also don't know if we have the defense to stop these 5 starters that have a lot of scoring on the Thunder side. So that's my prediction. I want to hear yours in the comment section below. A lot of just kind of me talking and spitballing some thoughts and no gameplay at all in this episode. That was just kind of the way it shook down. I didn't see a really big need to play a game, and I really just wanted to get my thoughts on the team out there. There's been comments that have suggested some of these ideas that I threw out there today, and I wanted to give my take on them as well. That'll conclude this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Me babbling on about our Vancouver Blizzard squad. The playoffs will begin next time. The entire round 1 matchup against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Hope you're excited. Again, with these playoff episodes, it's going to be a lot of gameplay and a lot of me editing it down, so it'll probably be a little bit before it gets released. But I'll see you then. Bring the Blizzard.